The ship's AI responded with an analysis that left Alina more puzzled than before. Commander, the static contains embedded patterns that don't match any known cosmic phenomenon in our database. Alina leaned closer to the holographic display where ARIA had isolated the waveform. It pulsed with an almost organic rhythm, rising and falling like breath. Could it be some kind of natural radio source we haven't cataloged? Asked Lieutenant Rodriguez, the ship's astronavigator. His eyes were sunken from lack of sleep, dark circles prominent against his pale skin. Natural sources don't typically change in response to our transmissions, Alina replied, watching as the pattern shifted again, mirroring the frequency adjustments ARIA had just made to their distress signal. Whatever this is, it's reacting to us. The bridge fell silent. 58 crew members remained alive after the asteroid collision that had claimed 23 lives and damaged their hibernation systems. Alina felt the weight of their survival pressing down on her shoulders. The Artemis carried humanity's hope, 8,000 colonists in suspended animation, genetic samples from Earth's biosphere, and the technology needed to terraform their destination planet. If they failed, this mission, the most ambitious project humanity had ever undertaken, would become a coffin drifting eternally through space. We should boost the signal, Dr. Sarah Lindstrom suggested. The exobiologist had spent most of the journey studying the theoretical biology of their target world. Now she studied the pattern with intense focus. If something intelligent is out there, we should make it as easy as possible for them to find us. Chief Engineer Kaido Nakamura shook his head firmly. We barely have enough power to maintain life support. Boosting the signal would cut our remaining oxygen time by half. And if it's not friendly? Security Chief Alvarez added, voicing the concern Alina had been avoiding. We're broadcasting our exact location to something we don't understand. Alina studied the faces of her senior staff. Fear mixed with hope, desperation with determination. They had trained for countless emergency scenarios, but first contact had always been theoretical, something for future generations to handle after their colony was established. Now it might be their only chance for survival. ARIA. Continue analyzing the pattern. Look for any mathematical constants, any structure that might indicate deliberate communication, Alina ordered. Nakamura, I need options for extending life support beyond the 72-hour mark. I've already converted every non-essential system, Nakamura replied. Unless we start shutting down sections of the ship and consolidating the crew. Alina nodded grimly. Draft a plan. We'll move everyone to the central hub if we have to. She turned to Dr. Chen, who had remained silent throughout the discussion. Doctor, I know xenolinguistics wasn't supposed to be practical until we reached our destination, but it seems your expertise is needed sooner than expected. If this is some form of communication, how would you recommend we respond? Chen looked up from his datapad, his expression a mixture of academic excitement and very human fear. We should establish a clear mathematical baseline. Prime numbers, the value of pi, basic atomic structures, universal constants that any technological civilization would recognize. Do it, Alina commanded. Work with ARIA to incorporate those elements into our next transmission. As the senior staff dispersed to their tasks, Alina remained on the bridge, staring at the view screen where stars shone with cold indifference. One of the emergency lighting panels flickered overhead, casting intermittent shadows across the command console. The Artemis had been humanity's bold statement that they were ready to spread beyond their solar system. Now it might become the first chapter in an entirely different story, one where humans weren't alone in the cosmos. She touched the wedding band she still wore, thinking of her wife back on Earth. Maya would be 57 now, perhaps watching the night sky, and wondering if the Artemis had reached its destination. The thought of never seeing her again had been bearable when balanced against the importance of their mission. Now, with death looming so close, the sacrifice felt sharper. Araya. Alina said quietly when the bridge had emptied, record a personal message for transmission to Earth. Low priority. To be sent only if we restore enough power. Recording, Commander, the AI responded. Elena took a deep breath. Maya, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but something incredible is happening out here in the darkness. We might not be alone after all. The crew gathered around the holographic display as Marcus Chen gestured excitedly at the decoded transmission. His eyes were bloodshot from 36 hours without sleep, but burned with an intensity that made everyone lean forward. The mathematical sequences acted as a key, he explained, pointing to cascading symbols that transformed from alien geometries into recognizable schematics. Whoever sent this doesn't just understand our technology. They comprehend how we think. Elena studied the repair protocols, which outlined a bypass method for their quantum drive that hadn't even been in the Artemis official technical documentation. This uses experimental theories from Dr. Takahashi's team, she said slowly. His research was classified. It never left Earth's quantum engineering division, which means they'd been monitoring us for a very long time, Lion Park added, her voice barely above a whisper. The communications officer had been the first to detect the response, staying at her post long after her shift ended. Now she looked both awed and terrified. Nakamura ran simulations on 3 separate terminals, testing the repair protocols against the Artemis' damaged systems. This would work, he confirmed, wiping sweat from his brow. We'd need to reconfigure the auxiliary power couplings. But the parts are exactly what we have available. Too convenient, Security Chief Alvarez countered, arms crossed over her chest. The former Marine had survived 2 colonial conflicts before joining the Artemis mission, and suspicion had kept her alive through both. Could be a trap. Lure us to these coordinates. Finish what the asteroid field started. Elena felt the weight of command pressing down heavier than ever. With oxygen levels critically low and water recyclers failing, they had perhaps 18 hours before crew members would begin losing consciousness. The mysterious coordinates were their only hope, but Alvarez's concern couldn't be dismissed. ARIA, display the coordinates relative to our current position, Elena ordered. The AI complied, projecting a 3-dimensional star map. A pulsing red dot represented the Artemis, while a blue marker showed their destination. That's within range even with minimal power, Rodriguez confirmed, studying the navigational data. It's behind the gas giant. We couldn't have seen it before. What about the transmission itself? Elena asked, turning to Chen. Any indication of their intentions? Any clue to who, or what, we're dealing with? The xenolinguist hesitated. The structure suggests multiple contributors, different syntax patterns layered together. And there's something else. He tapped his tablet, bringing up a separate data stream. Embedded within the technical data is what appears to be music. He activated the sequence, and a haunting melody filled the bridge, complex harmonies that shifted and evolved, somehow melancholy and uplifting simultaneously. It was unlike anything Elena had ever heard, yet strangely familiar, as though it resonated with something intrinsically human. A greeting, Chen said softly as the melody faded. Universal mathematics for the practical help. Music for connection. The senior staff fell silent, each processing the implications. Humanity had long debated whether they were alone in the universe, but few had considered that other intelligences might have been waiting, watching, perhaps even guiding them from afar. We need to vote, Elena finally said. This affects everyone. Full crew assembly in 20 minutes. The vote wasn't close. With death imminent and a mystery beckoning, human curiosity overpowered caution. Even Alvarez acknowledged their lack of alternatives with a reluctant nod. As repair teams implemented the alien instructions, Elena recorded what might be humanity's most significant historical document, the official first contact log. She kept it clinical and factual, hiding the tremor in her voice, the dizzying mix of fear and hope that threatened to overwhelm her. 8 hours later, the Artemis limped toward the coordinates, minimal power restored to engines and life support. The gas giant loomed ahead, its swirling storms dwarfing their vessel. As they rounded its massive curve, sensors detected the structure hidden in its shadow. "My God," Rodriguez breathed as the view screen adjusted. "That's not a ship. That's a city." The structure stretched across space like a constellation brought to life. Crystalline spires and massive rings interconnected by threads of light, pulsing with energy that their sensors couldn't fully analyze. It rotated slowly, creating an illusion of flowing water, as though the entire station was alive. And at its center, a docking bay opened like a flower blooming in the void. The docking process completed with a gentle shudder, mechanical clamps securing the Artemis within the massive bay. Status indicators showed a perfect seal, and external sensors reported an atmosphere being pumped into the chamber. Nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and trace gases in proportions identical to Earth's. "They've recreated our atmosphere down to the parts per million," Dr. Lindstrom marveled, studying the readings. "This isn't approximation, it's exact replication." Elena stood at the airlock with her first contact team. Chen, Alvarez, Lindstrom, and Nakamura. Each wore their formal uniform, hastily cleaned for the occasion. Alvarez had reluctantly agreed to leave her sidearm behind after Chen's passionate argument that armed diplomacy wasn't diplomacy at all. "Remember the protocol," Elena reminded them, her voice steadier than she felt. "No sudden movements. Follow my lead on all interactions. Chen has primary communication authority. If their method of communication isn't verbal, defer to his expertise." The airlock cycled, revealing a corridor that seemed to be made of living crystal. The walls pulsed with soft blue light that responded to their movement, brightening as they stepped forward. The floor felt organic beneath their boots, slightly yielding like moss, but structured like polished stone. "No right angles," Nakamura observed, running a hand along the curved wall. "The entire architecture follows natural patterns, spirals, fractals." They followed the corridor as it gently curved downward, opening into a vast chamber that stole their breath. The ceiling arched hundreds of meters above them, a transparent dome showing the gas giant's turbulent atmosphere and the star-scattered void beyond. The floor was a seamless mosaic depicting what appeared to be a map of the galaxy, with thousands of tiny lights marking what Elena guessed were inhabited systems. And waiting in a perfect semicircle stood the 7 representatives. Chen inhaled sharply, fingers trembling as he activated his data tablet to record. "Convergent evolution doesn't explain this diversity," he whispered. "These species evolved in completely different environments." The beings before them represented a staggering range of evolutionary paths. To the left stood an entity composed of what looked like liquid mercury, its surface constantly rippling and forming temporary appendages. Beside it towered a massive arthropod with compound eyes that refracted light into rainbow patterns. Next was a being that seemed to be made of interlocking geometric plates, constantly reconfiguring themselves. At the center stood Sirinth, nearly 3 meters tall, with translucent crystalline skin that revealed complex internal structures flowing with luminescent fluid. It had no visible eyes, but Elena felt observed, studied, measured. The 4th being was small and furred with 6 limbs, and a face dominated by sensory organs Elena couldn't identify. The 5th floated above the ground, a gaseous entity contained within what appeared to be a self-generated force field. The 6th had a humanoid form, but was composed of tightly interwoven vines or tendrils, flowers occasionally blooming and then retracting across its surface. The 7th and final entity was so unlike anything terrestrial that Elena's mind struggled to process its form. It seemed to exist partly in dimensions her eyes couldn't properly interpret, its edges blurring and shifting in ways that induced a mild vertigo. Elena stepped forward, hand raised in what humans had long assumed was a universal gesture of peace. "I am Commander Elena Reyes of the Earth vessel Artemis. We know who you are, Elena Maria Reyes." The words formed directly in her mind, carried on a wave of emotion that felt like welcome, amusement, and something akin to pride. We have known your species since your ancestors first looked to the stars with wonder. We have watched you grow, stumble, rise again." Xerinth stepped forward, its crystalline form catching the light in hypnotic patterns. Each step made a musical tone that Alina recognized from the transmission they had received. "You have always been among us, though you did not know it. You simply needed to ask." Alina felt disoriented as she stood before the Cooperative Council chamber. The massive amphitheater seemed to defy physics, its curved interior larger than the exterior structure should allow. Representatives from 87 spacefaring civilizations occupied tiered seating arranged not by species or political affiliation, but by what Xerinth had called perception harmonics, groups who experienced reality through similar sensory frameworks. "They will show you now," Xerinth communicated, its crystalline form shimmering with subtle color changes that Chen had explained were emotional indicators. Today, the being radiated shades of deep amber, anticipation, perhaps, or ceremonial solemnity. The center of the chamber darkened, and a three-dimensional projection materialized. Alina recognized Earth, but a younger Earth, with continental formations from millions of years past. The display accelerated through geological time, showing the planet's evolution. Then, primitive life appeared, developed, diversified. The timeline accelerated further, showing the rise and fall of dinosaurs, the emergence of mammals, and finally, early hominids. "This is the standard observation protocol," Xerinth explained as Alina watched human ancestors develop tools, language, agriculture. All potentially viable intelligence-bearing worlds are monitored. The timeline slowed at the dawn of the 20th century. Alina watched world wars ravage the planet, saw the first atomic weapons, the Cold War, environmental crisis, all compressed into a brutal montage of humanity's darkest moments. "This is typically when species self-terminate," a Drovian council member added, its insectoid form shifting forward. "Nuclear capability combined with tribalistic instincts creates a 94.3% extinction probability within 1 century. The timeline continued: climate catastrophes, resource wars, pandemics, but alongside the disasters, Alina saw humanity's responses: international cooperation frameworks, climate engineering projects, the unification of scientific communities across political divides, the Mars colonies, the asteroid mining initiatives that had ultimately led to the Artemis mission. "You adapted," Xerinth observed. "Where other species fragmented under pressure, humans unified. Where others depleted resources to extinction, you developed alternatives. It was unexpected. We almost failed many times," Alina noted, watching familiar historical events unfold before her. Events she had studied in school, never imagining alien civilizations had been studying them too. "Yes," agreed a Tellurian counselor, its gravitational field causing small objects to orbit its central mass. "The probability models predicted your extinction 17 distinct times. You defied statistical certainty." The display shifted to show a star map, with a shadowy presence expanding across one quadrant. Systems winked out one by one as the darkness spread. "The Voidborn are not a species," Xerinth explained. "They are a philosophy that has consumed multiple civilizations. They believe that evolution through competition is the only true path, that cooperation creates weakness, that the strong must dominate or be eliminated." "We've had similar philosophies on Earth," Alina said quietly. "Yes, but you overcame them." Xerinth's colors shifted to deep violet. "The Voidborn consume worlds, Commander. They assimilate technologies and biological advantages from conquered species. Their tactics evolve constantly, incorporating the strengths of those they defeat." The Drovian representative activated another simulation, showing cooperative defense vessels arranged in perfect geometric formations, executing textbook maneuvers against Voidborn attackers. Alina immediately spotted the problem. The cooperative forces maintained formation even when it became disadvantageous, followed protocols even when circumstances changed. Your predictable, logical defenses have failed consistently, the Drovian stated, its voice a blend of harmonics that somehow conveyed frustration. The Voidborn anticipate our responses with 99.7% accuracy. We need something they cannot predict, a gaseous entity communicated from across the chamber. We need human chaos. Alina finally understood the true significance of their distress call being answered. The cooperative hadn't rescued them out of mere benevolence. They had been watching humanity for centuries, witnessing their capacity to survive against all odds, to adapt when logic said they should fail, to create illogical, messy, beautiful solutions from impossible situations. You want us to help you fight, Alina stated. It wasn't a question. No, Commander Reyes. Kazarinth's thoughts carried an emotion Alina couldn't quite identify, something between amusement and profound respect. We want you to teach us how to think like humans, how to improvise, how to embrace chaos as a strength rather than a flaw. The chamber fell silent as 87 species awaited her response. Alina thought of Earth, still unaware of the vast community that had been watching them struggle and survive. Unaware that their messy, imperfect history had made them uniquely valuable in a universe of perfect, predictable civilizations. We'll help you, she said finally. That's what humans do. After his neural library session, Shen found Alina in what the crew had nicknamed the Crossroads, a central hub where species from across the cooperative gathered to share meals and conversation. The space defied Earth architectural principles, ceilings that shifted height according to the occupants beneath them, tables that morphed to accommodate wildly different physiologies, and ambient sounds that somehow allowed simultaneous conversations without cacophony. You look like you've seen the face of God, Alina remarked as Chen collapsed into the seat across from her. His pupils were dilated, face flushed with excitement. Better, he replied, hands trembling as he reached for the water glass that materialized before him. I've seen the complete history of interstellar linguistics. Alina, they've documented every form of communication they've encountered, mathematical, chemical, gestural, electromagnetic, even forms based on gravity fluctuations and quantum entanglement. Alina nodded, watching a group of Marexi engineers across the room. The tentacled beings had taken a particular liking to Nakamura, who was currently sketching something on a holographic display, while they waved their appendages in what Chen had explained was their expression of delight. They're impressed by his intuitive approach to engineering problems, Chen explained, following her gaze. Apparently, Marexi engineers require 12 years of certification before they're permitted to deviate from established design protocols. Nakamura's willingness to immediately propose unorthodox solutions fascinates them. It's not just him, Alina said. Dr. Lindstrom was nearly mobbed by Drovian medical researchers yesterday. They couldn't believe humans had solved bacterial resistance through phage therapy a century ago. Their entire medical approach is synthetic antibiotics, and they're hitting evolutionary dead ends. Chen leaned forward, lowering his voice. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. I've been comparing our technological development with other species in the cooperative. We're behind in propulsion, energy generation, material science, but dramatically ahead in several unexpected areas, such as social adaptation, for one. Most cooperative species took millennia to achieve planetary unification. Some never have. They maintain rigid separation between population groups. The Tellurians consider our governance systems radical to the point of being dangerous. The concept of peaceful power transitions every few years shocked their representatives. Alina considered this. Across the room, she noticed Lieutenant Rodriguez engaged in what appeared to be a game with several arthropod-like beings. He was losing badly but laughing, adapting his strategy with each round. I've noticed something else, Alina said. Watch any crisis response here on the station. As if on cue, a minor technical alert sounded, indicating an environmental fluctuation in a nearby sector. Alina gestured for Chen to observe the various species' reactions. The Drovians immediately consulted handheld devices. The Tellurians froze in place awaiting instructions, and the Marexi formed a discussion circle. "They follow protocols perfectly," Chen noted. "Exactly. No improvisation. Even their emergency procedures are choreographed like dances, beautiful and precise, but utterly dependent on the situation matching their expectations." Chen's eyes widened with understanding. "And when the unexpected happens, they falter," Elena finished. "The Voidborn threaten them precisely because they operate outside predictable patterns." "Sound familiar?" "Like humans," Chen whispered. "We're chaos agents." "We're survivors," Elena corrected. "Earth forced us to adapt constantly. Climate shifts, resource limitations, social upheavals. We've never had the luxury of perfect stability, so we learned to thrive in uncertainty." A Drovian researcher approached their table, its 4 eyes blinking in sequence, their version of a respectful greeting. "Language Specialist Chen, may I inquire about human communication protocols during resource scarcity conflicts? Our historical simulations indicate your species should have terminated during your 21st century climate oscillation. The survival path cannot be mathematically resolved." Chen smiled. "That's precisely what we're trying to explain. Sometimes the math doesn't predict the outcome." The Drovian's exoskeleton clicked in what Elena had learned was confusion. "If math fails, what remains?" "Imagination," Elena replied. "Intuition. Stubbornness. Hope." The alien recorded her response with its device. "These variables are not in our equations." "Perhaps," Chen suggested gently, "that's why you needed us to answer that distress call." The first indication of the Voidborn attack came as a subtle vibration through the station's structure. Elena was conferring with Nakamura and a group of cooperative engineers when the harmonic alarms began, not the blaring klaxons humans associated with emergencies, but a complex, melodic pattern that rose and fell in rhythmic waves. "What is that?" Nakamura asked, looking up from the propulsion schematics they had been discussing. Their Marexi colleague, a tentacled engineer named something approximating Thalix, retracted its manipulator appendages into a defensive posture. "Proximity alert. Level 3. Protocol dictates immediate return to designated safety zones." Before Elena could respond, a station-wide announcement echoed in multiple languages. The human translation came last. "Attention. Unidentified vessels have emerged from subspace. All personnel follow emergency deployment patterns. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Elena and Nakamura exchanged glances. "We should get to the Artemis," she said, but even as they started moving, Sirinth's telepathic message reached her. "Commander Rice, your presence is requested in the Defense Coordination Chamber immediately." Throughout the station, Elena observed the cooperative species responding with practiced precision. The Drovians moved in perfect formation toward defensive positions. The Tellurians assembled in concentric circles, their gravity manipulation abilities creating protective fields. The Marexi flowed like liquid toward engineering stations. Every movement was choreographed, every response planned and rehearsed. "Too perfect," Nakamura muttered as they hurried toward the coordination chamber. "They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Exactly what the Voidborn would expect," Elena realized. The coordination chamber was a massive spherical room with a holographic display of the surrounding space at its center. Elena and Nakamura arrived to find representatives from several cooperative species already present, including Sirinth and a Drovian commander. The holographic display showed 5 Voidborn vessels materializing from subspace. Their design defied conventional engineering, asymmetrical, organic-looking structures that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. They moved not in formation, but in a seemingly random pattern, yet with obvious coordination. "They bypassed our early detection systems," the Drovian commander reported, its exoskeleton clicking in agitation. "Defense Protocol 7 Alpha is in effect. Tellurian gravity wells are deployed. Marexi shield harmonics activated." Elena watched as the cooperative defensive vessels arranged themselves in a geometric pattern, She recognized from the simulations she'd been shown. Their tactics were textbook perfect and completely predictable. "They're hurting you," she interrupted, stepping forward. All alien eyes turned toward her. "Look at their approach vector. They're not attacking your strong points. They're maneuvering you into position." The Drovian commander's compound eyes flashed. "The defense grid is operating at optimal efficiency. The protocol specifies." "Forget the protocol," Elena insisted. "The Voidborn know your protocols. They're counting on them." She turned to Xerinth. "You brought us here because we think differently. Let us help." After a moment of silence, Xerinth's crystalline form pulsed with light. "What do you suggest, Commander?" "Chaos," Elena replied. She turned to Nakamura. "Those research probes we were examining yesterday, the ones studying the gas giant's atmosphere, how many are operational?" 17, Nakamura answered immediately, catching on to her thinking. "They're equipped with minimal shield technology and atmospheric sampling tools. And they're not registered as defensive assets," Elena added. "Alvarez, are you linked in?" She called through her communicator. "Here, Commander," came the security chief's voice. "I'm with Chen in the communications hub." "Perfect. I need you to take control of the station's scientific scanners. Reconfigure them to emit a focused pulse on rotating frequencies, not enough to damage, but enough to disrupt their cloaking technology." "That's not their designated function," the Drovian objected. "Exactly why the Voidborn won't expect it," Elena replied. She turned back to the display. "Nakamura, reprogram those probes to mimic cooperative defense vessel signatures and deploy them in a random scatter pattern through this sector." She indicated a region of space behind the approaching Voidborn ships. Over the next minutes, Elena watched as her crew implemented the impromptu plan. Alvarez redirected the scientific scanners, creating sensor ghosts that confused the Voidborn targeting systems. Nakamura's reprogrammed probes appeared as phantom reinforcements, causing the enemy vessels to divide their attention. Chen, working with cooperative communication specialists, transmitted contradictory orders on frequencies the Voidborn had been monitoring. When the Voidborn commander's transmission came through, demanding surrender, Elena responded with a tactical bluff that violated every negotiation protocol in the cooperative database. She claimed to have a quantum destabilizer aimed at the enemy flagship, using technical terminology she and Nakamura had invented on the spot. The confusion was enough. The Voidborn vessels, encountering a defense that didn't match their predictive models, hesitated. That hesitation allowed the cooperative forces to regroup and launch a coordinated counterattack that drove the enemy back into subspace. As the threat indicators faded from the holographic display, Xerinth approached Elena. The crystalline being's colors had shifted to a deep blue that Chen had never documented before. "Now you understand why we answered your call, Commander." Xerinth's thoughts carried a complexity of emotion that transcended easy translation. The cooperative built wonders through perfect order, but forgot the power of creative disorder. "You never did." "Chaos has its uses," Elena replied with a tired smile. "Indeed. And now the Voidborn have encountered it for the first time. They will adapt. But so will we with your help." The Artemis gleamed in the docking bay, its hull now a seamless blend of human engineering and cooperative technology. The once damaged vessel had been transformed into something entirely new, a hybrid ship that embodied the partnership forming between humanity and the galactic community. Iridescent alloys caught the light as maintenance drones made final adjustments to the external sensors. "She's beautiful," Elena murmured, running her hand along the smooth hull. Beneath her palm, the metal felt warm, almost alive, a property of the self-healing alloys the Marexi had integrated into the structure. Nakamura stood beside her, checking diagnostics on his tablet. "The folding drive is fully integrated. We've achieved a theoretical maximum of 14 light-years per jump. That's about 2,000 times faster than our original engine capacity. And Earth is 17 jumps away," Nakamura confirmed. We could be home in less than 3 days. The thought was dizzying. The Artemis had been traveling for 3 years before the accident that had stranded them. Now they could return in less time than it had taken to repair the original damage. How's the crew adapting to the neural implants? Elena asked as they walked the perimeter of the ship. Remarkably well. Dr. Lindstrom says the integration is proceeding without complications. The basic cooperative knowledge package has been assimilated by everyone, and Chen is developing specialized packages for each department. Elena nodded, her own implant a subtle presence at the base of her skull. With it, she could access the cooperative's basic scientific and cultural database, translate any known language, and communicate telepathically with similarly equipped individuals. The technology had transformed her crew from visitors to participants in the vast exchange of knowledge that sustained the interstellar community. As they completed their inspection, Elena saw Xyrinth approaching, accompanied by the full Cooperative Council, an unprecedented honor. The diverse group of beings moved in solemn procession, carrying what appeared to be ceremonial objects. "It appears we're getting a formal send-off," Elena remarked to Nakamura. "More than that, Commander Reyes," Xyrinth communicated, having caught her thought. "Today we formalize our alliance. 5 representatives from the cooperative will join your journey to Earth as diplomatic envoys, and we bring gifts, technologies, and knowledge to share with your world." The council representatives approach, each presenting an artifact to be loaded aboard the Artemis. Clean energy systems that would eliminate Earth's remaining fossil fuel dependence. Medical technologies that could cure diseases humans had battled for centuries. Agricultural innovations that would end food scarcity, each gift more profound than the last. Then Xyrinth stepped forward, holding a small crystalline sphere that pulsed with internal light. "And this, Commander, is our most significant offering." Elena felt the weight of the moment as the sphere was placed in her hands. "What is it?" she asked, though something in her already knew. "The end of death." Xyrinth answered simply, "Biological immortality through cellular regeneration, a technology that has allowed many cooperative species to transcend their natural lifespans. With this, humans need never age, never succumb to the deterioration of time." A profound silence fell over the gathered crew members. Elena stared at the small sphere that contained such an impossible gift, the dream humans had chased throughout their entire existence. "Immortality," she whispered. "If you accept it," Xyrinth confirmed. "The implementation is simple. The regenerative protocols can be distributed through your existing medical infrastructure. Within 1 generation, no human would need to die of natural causes." Elena looked at her senior officers, seeing the weight of this decision in their eyes. Medical Officer Rivera stepped forward, her expression troubled. "What are the consequences? For individuals? For societies?" she asked. "How do your species handle the psychological effects of indefinite lifespans?" "Some adapt well," Xyrinth acknowledged. "Others struggle with purpose in the face of endless time. Some cooperative species have chosen to limit implementation or incorporate ceremonial endings when individuals feel their time is complete." "And population growth," Rivera pressed. "A challenge requiring careful management," Xyrinth admitted. "Some worlds establish colonization requirements for those choosing regeneration." Elena felt the crystalline sphere growing heavier in her hands. This wasn't just a medical advancement. It was a fundamental shift that would transform human civilization at its core. Every social structure, every cultural tradition around death and legacy, every economic system would need to be reimagined. "This isn't a decision I can make for humanity," she said finally, her voice firm despite her inner conflict. "Our species needs to earn this technology, not simply receive it. We need to prove we can handle this responsibility. By how we manage first contact, by how we integrate into the galactic community, by how we share the other gifts you've provided." A murmur ran through the cooperative representatives. Elena sensed surprise, confusion, but also, from Xyrinth at least, a growing respect. "Our mortality drives our innovation," Rivera added, supporting her commander's position. Our limited time makes us value each moment, each connection, each achievement. Perhaps that's part of the chaos you value in us. Alina held the sphere out, offering it back to Xerinth. When humanity is ready, truly ready, we'll gratefully accept this gift. But that day is not today. Instead of taking the sphere, Xerinth produced a small crystalline container. Place it within. This seed will hold the knowledge until your civilization achieves the ethical framework to wield it responsibly. As Alina secured the sphere in its container, she felt both the weight of what she was denying her species and the rightness of her decision. Some gifts required preparation to receive properly. Immortality would come to humanity, but humanity would come to it on its own terms, ready for both its promise and its burden. The approach to Earth was nothing like Alina had imagined during their long journey outward. The Artemis emerged from its final spacefold maneuver at the edge of the solar system, the familiar planets sliding into view like old friends. But now they came as messengers, not just explorers, harbingers of a change so profound that human history would forever be divided into before and after their return. Broadcasting on all Earth frequencies, Communications Officer Park announced, her voice steady despite the emotion Alina could see in her eyes. Response incoming. The message that filled the bridge came not from NASA or the European Space Agency or any single nation's authority, but from a unified command. This is Earth Unified Response, welcoming Artemis. Your signal has been received. Approach trajectory uploaded. Welcome home. Chen looked up from his station. Earth Unified Response. That's new. They formed it after we sent our first transmissions back, Dr. Lindstrom explained, having reviewed the data packet that accompanied the message. When they realized we'd made contact, every nation contributed to a joint authority for first contact protocols. Alina felt a surge of pride. Even without the cooperative's guidance, humanity had recognized the need for unity in the face of cosmic significance. That boded well for what was to come. The journey inward through the solar system became a triumphant procession. At Mars, the colonial outposts sent small vessels to escort them. Beyond the moon, Earth's combined space fleet formed an honor guard, ships from nations that had once been adversaries, now flying in formation around the returning Artemis. And finally, Earth itself came into view. The blue marble that had haunted the dreams of every crew member during their long absence. From orbit, it looked much as they had left it, but the data streaming to their systems told a different story. In 3 years, significant progress had been made in atmospheric carbon reduction. The great oceanic cleanup initiatives had advanced. Regional conflicts had diminished as resources were redirected toward preparing for humanity's new role among the stars. They've been busy, Nakamura observed. They knew we were coming back with something important, Alina replied. They've been getting ready. The landing site wasn't Houston or Cape Canaveral or any traditional space center. Instead, they descended toward the newly constructed arrival platform in Tanzania, a massive facility built specifically for their return, situated at the symbolic birthplace of humankind. As the Artemis settled onto the platform with barely a tremor, Alina could see the massive crowd that had gathered, hundreds of thousands of people from every nation on Earth. Ready? She asked her crew and the 5 cooperative representatives who would be the first non-humans to set foot on Earth. Xerinth, who had chosen to accompany the diplomatic mission personally, communicated a sense of calm certainty. We have prepared for this moment for centuries, Commander. The question is, are your people ready? Alina looked at the view screen showing the waiting crowd, the twin flags flying side by side, Earth's unified emblem, and the spiral symbol of the cooperative. We're about to find out. The moment the Artemis crew emerged, with Alina leading and the alien representatives following, a hush fell over the crowd. Then, slowly, a wave of sound rose. Not cheers exactly, but a collective exhalation of wonder and recognition. Humanity was meeting its cosmic neighbors for the first time, and the response was reverence rather than fear. The formal reception included representatives from every nation, speaking in a carefully choreographed sequence that demonstrated Earth's diversity while emphasizing its unity. The aliens responded in kind, each using their native communication methods, with Chen providing translations when the neural interfaces couldn't bridge certain concepts. What followed transformed human society with breathtaking speed. Cooperative technologies eliminated energy scarcity within months. Disease rates plummeted as medical knowledge spread. Educational systems were revolutionized as human students gained access to selected portions of the cooperative knowledge base. Yet the most profound change was psychological. Humanity's cosmic loneliness, the existential isolation that had shaped religions, philosophies, and cultures for millennia, ended. They were not alone, had never been alone. And more importantly, they were valued not despite their differences from other intelligent species, but because of them. 10 years after the Artemis had departed Earth as a desperate attempt to ensure humanity's survival through colonization, Alina stood on the observation deck of the Concordia, Earth's first purpose-built diplomatic vessel. Around her, the next generation of human representatives prepared for their journey to the cooperative Central Worlds. They were young, brilliant, and had grown up in a world where interspecies cooperation was normal, where humanity's place among the stars was assured. Commander Reyes, one of them, asked, a young diplomat named Izara, "Do you ever regret it? Sending that distress signal into the void?" Elena touched the crystalline seed that hung around her neck, the immortality technology still waiting for the day humanity would be ready to receive it responsibly. In the decades since their return, she had been offered the highest positions on Earth, but had chosen instead to continue her role as a bridge between humanity and the cooperative. "Never," she answered honestly. "We thought we were alone in the universe, fighting for our survival against indifferent cosmos. We didn't realize we were auditioning." Through the viewport, Earth shrank to a blue dot as the Concordia accelerated toward its first spacefold. The distress signal that had echoed into the void had been answered, but the true response had been humanity itself awakening to its unique purpose in a universe that needed exactly what they had always been: beautifully, perfectly unpredictable.